My name is Lillian Myrtle Cross. I'm 83 years old, and I've lived most of my life in a small town tucked between the hills of western North Carolina. The kind of town where secrets are passed down like heirlooms, quiet, heavy, and coated in silence. To most folks around here, I'm just Miss Lillian, the woman with the lace doilies and lemon bars, the retired Sunday school teacher who never missed a potluck. I smile when they wave. I nod when they ask how I'm holding up. But they don't know. They never did. No one sees the little girl buried under these wrinkles and silver curls. No one hears the echo of the door that slammed shut behind me 60 years ago. Not unless I tell them. And that's why I'm speaking now. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. It happened in the summer of 1945. I was just a girl, barely 7, with skinned knees and a love for drawing butterflies in the dirt with a stick. We lived in a worn-down farmhouse just off Mill Creek Road. My mother, Edwina, spent most of her time chain-smoking on the porch, watching the road for visitors who never came. And my father, well, he was a complicated man. The kind of man who could smile at the preacher on Sunday and break a plate against the wall on Monday. He wasn't always cruel. That's what made it worse. Some days he brought me peppermint sticks from the store in town. Other days, he brought something far more terrible home with him. Rage. Darkness. A monster that only showed its face behind closed doors. That afternoon the sun was warm. I remember that vividly. I'd just come inside from playing under the willow tree, my dress stained with grass and joy. Mama was gone, off to help her sister deliver a baby in the next county over. It was just me and him. He called my name, soft at first, like honey on biscuits. "Lily girl," he said. "Come here now." I hesitated. Something in his voice didn't sit right. But I was taught to obey. Taught that good girls don't question their fathers. So, I followed the sound of his boots creaking down the hallway. He was standing in the doorway to the back room, the room we weren't supposed to go in, the room that smelled of tobacco and old secrets. He smiled. That smile that made my stomach knot even before I understood why. "Go on in now," he said, stepping aside. I looked up at him, then at the room beyond. I walked in slowly. Then I heard the sound that would haunt my sleep for the next 60 years. Click. The door locked behind me. And that was the day I stopped being a child. No one came when I cried. No one believed me when I told the truth. The days that followed were a blur of silence and shame. I tried to tell Mama once. I whispered it through tears while she braided my hair. She jerked her hand back like I was made of fire. "Don't you dare say that again, Lillian Myrtle Cross," she snapped. "Your father is a good man. He puts food on our table." After that, I didn't speak of it again. Not for a very long time. But now I'm ready. 'Cause something happened 2 weeks ago that changed everything. Something I thought would never come. Got a letter. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in familiar slanted cursive. Inside one sentence. "I know what happened in that room. You weren't alone." My breath caught. My fingers trembled. The letter fell to my lap, and the walls of my quiet kitchen seemed to close in around me. After all these years, someone knew. Someone had seen. Or worse, someone had been there too. And that meant one thing I never thought possible. I wasn't the only one he hurt. And if that's true, then the truth might finally come out. And so will I. I'm done whispering. I'm done pretending. It's time to speak. Even if it tears everything apart. Even if the past rises up like a storm. Because for the first time in 60 years, the door isn't locked anymore. I'm stepping through it. And I won't be walking back in alone. If this story pulled you in, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for the next gripping chapter in Lillian's powerful journey. The morning after I received the letter, I didn't sleep a wink. I sat at the kitchen table all night, staring at that thin piece of paper like it might speak again. I read those 12 words 100 times. I know what happened in that room. You weren't alone. I didn't know what scared me more, that someone else had lived through it too. Or that someone had been watching me all those years ago and said nothing. At 83, I thought I'd buried that part of myself deep enough that even God forgot. I told myself it was better that way. Cleaner. Safer. But now the silence was cracking open like a fault line. And the truth. It was beginning to rumble. I needed help, but not from a lawyer or a therapist. I needed someone who knew me, who would believe me without looking for proof or motives. So I picked up the phone and dialed my niece Geneva. Geneva wasn't blood, not exactly. She was my sister-in-law's girl from a second marriage, but she was the only one in this family who ever saw me. Really saw me. When her mama died, she used to spend summers with me. I taught her to sew. She taught me how to use email. We had a bond. She answered on the third ring. Aunt Lil. Everything okay? I almost hung up. But then the words just spilled out. Jenny. I need you to come. She didn't ask why. She just said, I'm on my way. By sundown, she was pulling into my gravel driveway in a beat-up blue Honda. She came inside with her arms full of groceries. Fresh eggs, soup cans, strawberries, and a pint of vanilla ice cream. She sat across from me, handed me a bowl of soup, and said softly, Tell me. And I did. I told her everything. From the creak of the hallway floorboards to the sound of the lock. The look in his eyes. The silence from my mother. The shame that bloomed like a bruise and never healed. She didn't flinch. Didn't interrupt. She just cried, holding my hand tight, as I said out loud what I had never dared speak before. Then I showed her the letter. She read it, her brow tightening. Do you know who sent this? No idea. Do you want to find out? I looked her in the eye. Yes. We started with the envelope. No postmark. Hand-delivered. Slipped under my door sometime between dusk and dawn. That meant it had to be someone nearby. Someone who knew me or knew him. She took a picture of the handwriting with her phone and said, I'll run it past a friend of mine who does document work for the police. Might be a long shot, but you never know. That night, Geneva slept in the guest room, and I lay awake again. But this time my fear was laced with something I hadn't felt in decades. Oh. The next morning, she pulled an old photo album from the shelf. She flipped through the pages slowly, like searching for ghosts. Aunt Lil, who's this? I leaned closer. It was a faded picture of my father in his younger days, arms slung around a boy about 12 years old. His face was familiar, but I couldn't place him. That's Edward's son. From his friend Henry. They were always around. I think his name was Vernon. Geneva nodded slowly. Think he might have been in the house when it happened. I shook my head. I never saw anyone. But I suppose it's possible. We made a list of names. Anyone who was close to my father back then. Henry, his brother-in-law Curtis, the neighbor girl Marion. All of them either gone or in their final years. But Vernon? We weren't sure. 3 days later, Geneva got a call. His name is Vernon Beals. He's alive. Still lives here. 2 towns over in Wilton. My heart hammered. Do you want to see him? She asked gently. He nodded. She made the arrangements. Vernon agreed to meet us the next afternoon at a small diner on the outskirts of Wilton. He didn't say much on the phone, just that he remembered me and he remembered that house. The next day, I put on my best blouse and pearl earrings. Geneva helped me fix my hair. As we drove through the winding back roads, I stared out the window, thinking about all the times I had driven these same roads to church, to family reunions, to nowhere at all. Never once thinking the man who might hold the key to my past was living just over the ridge. We pulled into the gravel lot of the diner. It was one of those old-time places with green vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't played a song in years. Vernon was already there. Older now. Gray hair, hunched shoulders, eyes that carried too many stories. He stood when we approached. "Lillian," he said softly. "You still look just like your mama." We sat down. For a moment no one spoke. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the clink of a coffee mug being set down. Then he said the words that made my whole world tilt. "I was in the house that day." My breath caught. "I saw him take you into that room," Vernon continued, his voice low. "I didn't know what to do. I was a kid just a few years older than you." I froze. He looked away, shame in every line of his face. "And then you screamed," he whispered. Tears stung my eyes. "You heard me." Choke. "I did. But your mama came home and caught me listening. She grabbed my arm, shoved me out the door, and said if I ever spoke a word about it, she'd tell folks I was the one who did it." He paused. "I kept my mouth shut. All these years. But I never forgot." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small notebook. Worn and cracked, pages yellowed. "I wrote it down," he said. "Every detail I remembered. I kept it because I thought maybe, someday, you'd need it." He slid it across the table to me. I stared at it. My hands shook as I picked it up. The truth. Written. Documented. Witnessed. 60 years later. I wasn't invisible anymore. And I wasn't alone. If Lillian's story is gripping your heart, don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment below and subscribe. The ride home from Wilton was silent. Geneva drove, her knuckles white on the wheel, glancing at me every few minutes like she wasn't sure if I was going to cry or collapse. But I didn't do either. I just stared at that little notebook resting on my lap. The worn leather cover, the pages so delicate they might crumble if I breathed too hard, and inside, Vernon's slanted, looping handwriting, dated and signed. Everything was there. The hallway, the muffled voices, my scream, my mother's cold warning. Even the way Vernon saw me stumble out, clutching my dress like I was trying to hold my body together. I'd lived in fear of forgetting those details. Now they were all here, seen by someone else. Remembered. Written. And suddenly, I wasn't some senile old woman with too many stories. I was a witness, and I had a witness too. Geneva pulled into the driveway just as the sun began to drop behind the trees. The golden light painted the porch in long shadows, and for the first time in decades, I felt like I could breathe under that roof again. Inside, she made tea while I sat at the table, flipping through the notebook page by page. Halfway through, I found something I hadn't expected. A drawing. It was childlike, crude pencil lines, but I knew exactly what it was. The hallway of our old house. The thick wood door at the end. And in front of it, a small girl facing it. Her pigtails were messy, her dress torn at the shoulder.
Me.
I pressed my fingers to the page like it might reach back and hold me. That night, Geneva and I talked long into the darkness. She asked if I wanted to take it to the police. No, I said softly. What good would it do now? He's long dead. Mama too. She nodded. So, what do you want to do? I stared at the flickering candle between us, my voice steady. I want to tell my family the whole truth. The next morning, Geneva helped me write the invitation. Family brunch this Sunday. No excuses. Important family news. Come hungry. Come kind. She mailed them out herself. That gave us 4 days. 4 days to prepare. 4 days to gather everything. I found my old journals. Half-written entries, pages smudged with tears. Bits and pieces of my life scattered in ink. I pulled them together, organizing them by years, by wounds, by silences. Geneva made copies of Vernon's notebook and tucked them into envelopes with handwritten notes. Please read this before you speak. We made a list of who might come. My 3 children. Warren, the oldest, who lived in Colorado and hadn't called in 6 months. Elise, my middle child, who visited once a month and always brought me soup and sympathy. And Rachel, my youngest, sharp-tongued, brisk, too busy for anything unless it made her look good. Their spouses, their children, my grandchildren, my great-grands. If they all came, we'd need extra chairs. Sunday came like a storm cloud. At 10:03 a.m., Warren pulled up in a silver rental car. His eyes were red like he'd been crying in the airport bathroom. At 10:12, Elise walked in with a tray of deviled eggs and a nervous smile. "What's all this about, Mama?" she whispered as she kissed my cheek. And at 10:35, Rachel strolled in last. Heels clicking, lipstick perfect, tension wrapped tight around her like a scarf. By 11 o'clock, everyone was seated. Plates full. Coffee poured. I stood slowly at the head of the table, Geneva beside me. I held Vernon's notebook in one hand and a photo in the other, the one of me at age 9, taken just weeks after it happened. My smile brittle. My eyes hollow. "I didn't bring you here for food," I said. My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. "I brought you here to finally speak." They went quiet. And then I told them. Everything. From the day he closed the door. To the night I screamed. To the years I carried it like a shadow wrapped in silence. First no one spoke. Then Warren leaned forward, his eyes wide. "You mean Grandpa?" He nodded. "Yes." Rachel's lips tightened. "Why now? Why bring this up now?" Geneva stepped forward. "Because silence is a weapon too. And she's been wounded long enough." I handed each of them the copies Geneva made. Pages of Vernon's account. My journals. The truth laid bare. Elise began to cry. Warren stood, walked behind me, and rested a hand on my shoulder. But Rachel, he just stared. "You waited 60 years to tell us this. What are we supposed to do with it?" "You're supposed to believe me," I said softly. "You're supposed to carry it with me. And never let it happen again." Geneva placed a small voice recorder in the center of the table. "We're not hiding anymore," she said. "This is going into a podcast, an article, whatever Lillian wants. The world will hear her." That broke something in Warren. He began to sob. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have seen something. I should have known." I leaned into him. "None of you could have known. But now you do. And now maybe we all heal. Later that evening, after everyone left, I stood on the porch and watched the wind move through the trees. The silence felt different now. Not heavy, not choking, just quiet. And for the first time in 60 years, I wasn't afraid of it. If Lillian's truth moved you, please hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for the next moment. Her voice is no longer buried, and neither should yours be. 3 days after the family brunch, I received an envelope slid under my front door. No return address, just my name written in tight, elegant cursive. I held it in my hands for a moment before opening it, my breath shallow, heart thudding against my ribs. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, the ink faintly smudged in one corner. No signature. The message was short. There are more who remember. Don't stop now. Speak louder. That was all it said. And suddenly I wasn't just carrying my own truth. I was carrying theirs too. For years I thought I was alone in what I'd suffered, that no one else had lived through what I had. But now, that letter opened a new door, one filled with possibility, with pain, with echoes from others who'd been forced into silence just like me. Geneva found me sitting on the porch with the letter in my lap and a far-off look in my eyes. "You all right?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Someone else knows. Someone else saw." She sat beside me, our shoulders touching like we were girls again. "That means it's working," she said. "The silence is breaking." And break it I would. Geneva helped me set up a small recording space in my den. A desk, a borrowed microphone from the church's youth group, a simple laptop. We called it the Porchlight Project. Because sometimes just knowing someone's light is on is enough to make a person feel seen. I recorded my first episode that night. It wasn't fancy. I just told my story. No music, no fancy edits. Just my voice cracking in places but honest. I uploaded it the next morning. Geneva helped me share the link on Facebook. We posted it in a few community groups. I thought maybe a handful of people would click on it. By nightfall, the views had crossed 3,000. By the weekend it hit 40,000. Messages poured in from women and men, old and young, strangers who wrote, "You told my story. I never thought I'd hear someone say it out loud. I've been waiting my whole life for this." Each comment, each private message, each trembling confession added bricks to the foundation of something I never thought I'd be strong enough to build. A voice louder than the shame. I read every message. Every single one. And it was on the 5th day that I got the message that would change everything. It came from an account named Only Hope 74. No picture. Just one line. "Your father wasn't just a monster in your house. He was ours too." Froze. Geneva read it over my shoulder. "Do you know who this is?" I shook my head. "No. But I need to." I messaged them back immediately. "Please. Talk to me. You're safe here." The reply didn't come for 2 days. But when it did, it was longer than I expected. Her name was Ruth Abernathy. She'd grown up in our neighborhood 2 streets over. Her brother had played baseball with my younger brother, Caleb. Her family had attended the same church. And her father had been best friends with mine. The message described long nights. Doors closed. Fists clenched. Secrets kept. "My mother used to say the girls in our church always smiled too hard," Ruth wrote. "Now I know why." She told me things I had never heard before. That there were whispers about my father when I was a teenager. Whispers that dried up suddenly. That her father once called mine, "a man who knows how to keep women in their place." I read that line 3 times before I could even breathe. Geneva sat across from me, her mouth slightly open, eyes filled with something between sorrow and fury. "This goes deeper than we thought," she said. I nodded slowly. This was never just my pain. The next morning Ruth and I spoke on the phone. Her voice shook. Mine did too. But somewhere between the tears and the silence, we both agreed on one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She gave me the names of 2 other women she knew. Women she said carried similar ghosts. I reached out. They answered. And so began something I hadn't anticipated when I first sat down in front of that microphone. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was ours. We decided to hold a small community gathering, a listening circle. Geneva rented out the back room of the local library, and we invited every woman who had written in. We didn't ask them to share. We just told them they could come, sit, and be seen. 32 women showed up. And before the night ended, 20 of them stood to speak. The stories spilled out like rivers. Hidden wounds finally meeting open air. One woman, gray-haired and trembling, said, "My father was a deacon. He used to quote scripture while locking me in the cellar." Another, barely 30, whispered, "It started when I was 6. He died when I was 16, and I still wake up screaming." And when I stood at the front, notebook in hand, microphone steady, I said, "We were never meant to carry this alone. This shame was never ours to begin with. And now, it ends." The room went silent. And then applause broke out, not loud or forced but slow, steady, real. That night, as we left the library, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I saw a woman who had once been broken. But now, I saw a survivor, leader, a grandmother who didn't just remember her pain. She turned it into light for others. If this story has touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe. There are more voices waiting to be heard, and together we can make sure none of them are silenced again. The courtroom smelled of old paper and lemon polish. It wasn't a trial. There were no jurors, no gavel pounding over objections. Just a quiet civil hearing, initiated by a petition I filed with the help of Ruth and 3 other survivors. We were asking for our stories to be entered into public record. Officially. Not for money. Not for revenge. But for recognition. We wanted the silence broken permanently. In ink and archive. I sat on the bench next to Geneva, who gripped my hand like she was holding the last rope above a stormy sea. Ruth sat behind us, her arms wrapped around her niece. 3 more women sat on the left, clutching handwritten letters, photographs, or childhood diaries they had long kept hidden. The judge, a woman in her late 60s, adjusted her glasses and looked right at me. "Mrs. Lively," she said gently, "you may begin." I stood slowly, knees aching, heart steady. "My name is Vivian Lively," I began. "I'm 81 years old, and I have carried a secret since I was 6. I told them everything. Not for the first time, but for the first time out loud, to the law, to the system that once failed us all. I spoke clearly. I spoke slowly. I did not tremble. When I finished, I looked at the judge and said, "We can't prosecute ghosts, Your Honor. But we can bury the shame in the right grave. Not on us, but on those who built their lives by stealing pieces of ours." There was silence, and then the judge nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Lively, for your courage, for your truth." She approved the petition. Our stories would be recorded, preserved, and, if we chose, made public for the next generation to know. We had turned the secrets into history. And history is what people learn from. Outside, the air was cold, but I felt warmth in my chest like I hadn't in decades. Geneva hugged me tightly. "You did it, Vivi. You kicked down that door." I shook my head softly, looking at the women gathered around us. We did. The Porchlight project grew faster than we imagined. We started receiving stories from across the country. People who had never told a soul. A man in Arizona wrote, "I thought I'd die without ever saying it." A woman in Maine mailed us a cassette tape. Her story recorded on an old boombox, tears included. We partnered with libraries, universities, community centers. We held workshops on trauma, storytelling, healing. And we didn't just talk. We taught people how to listen. Because that's the real gift. Not just speaking truth but making room for it. 1 year after that first podcast episode, I stood before a packed auditorium in Dallas, Texas. It was our first national summit. Over 200 attendees. My daughter Miriam, my real daughter, stood at the podium and introduced me. My mother taught me that silence doesn't protect us, it isolates us. She didn't just find her voice, she gave it to the rest of us. The crowd rose. They stood. They clapped. Not for fame. Not for pity. But for the woman who had once sat alone behind a closed door and dared to open it, 60 years later, for the world to see what had happened on the other side. Today I sit in my garden as I write this. The porch light glows beside me, flickering with the last of the evening sun. My bones ache, my back protests, but my spirit is freer than it has ever been. And if you're reading this, or listening or watching, and you've been holding a secret that doesn't belong to you, you don't have to wait 60 years. You don't need a courtroom. You just need one moment of truth. And a little bit of light. Thank you for watching Vivian Lively's story. If it moved you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Silence ends when courage begins. See you in the next story.